thank you so much, Anthony. So many great papers throughout this 2 days, and the students have just been, without exception, incredible. Does anyone have any questions for the three speakers we've just heard? And I will give Anthony first choice if you want, only if you have a question. Does anyone else? Go on, Anthony.
Yeah, I think thank you all, three of you, by the way. Those were wonderful presentations. I think one kind of common thread through all of these was the topic of sort of replacement or substitution of AI for sort of human doing. And there is a sort of persistent theme, at least in the previous two, the last two presentations, about not necessarily being concerned about this maybe being something that we should not worry about as much. And so I was wondering if that was something which, given, I was also going to invite Bella maybe to speak a bit more about this. Is this something that you feel, should we be concerned at all about this? Is there any risk of of a sort of problematic substitution, or is this just not a thing to be worried about?
I guess we're not going to stop AI, and I think there's for me it's like AI is here and it's going to do what it's going to do, and that's going to be it. And I don't think we're going to have a ton of control over that. So I think it would be great if if I think about my presentation, it'd be great if we could diversify and have a view that that doesn't seem so singular. I guess for me, the fear is that we all become one, and I think we connect on a lot of levels being humans, but I don't think that it's wrong to be different. So I don't know if that answers it, but I think that there is a concern that we lose parts that make us us.
Yeah, that's a great response, actually. I think for me, like Bella, I agree. I don't think it's something you can just completely ignore or pretend isn't happening or refuse to engage in at all. I think it's here, and we have to learn to work with it. And Bella, your presentation brought this up for me. One of the things that really concerns me is that where AI has come from is us. It's trained with our words, and it's going to advance past us for sure, but it's trained with our biases and our inherent flaws already. And Bella's presentation is a great example of that, racism and colonialism. It's been baked in. All of our issues are baked in. And for me, I think ageism has been baked in, right? Is it okay for ABBA to just appear as ABBA? Why do they have to be ABBA when they're young? So I think there's maybe real concern about, can we see this as an opportunity to try and use AI to unbake some of those assumptions and maybe use it as something that's a bit more objective than we are, because it doesn't have emotional connections necessarily to these ideas. And so I don't know if we can use it that way, but I guess that would be something that I would be concerned about, is replacing ourselves with, something that's hyper baked in with all of our problems.
I don't have too much to add. So is there concern about replacement? Will there likely be, replacement of artists as a result of this technology? Sure, but I guess one thing I'm trying to draw our attention to is that we have control over whether we allow that to happen, and I think we should really examine what we value and whether we want that to happen. Yeah.
We have a question from Anna and a question from Aidan.
Thank you all for your presentations. They were really good. I have a question that's a response to Anthony's presentation, but I think maybe there are answers from everyone. So I have been thinking about the chess computers as well. And I don't personally follow chess, but I know people who do. And some people who I've talked to have said that it's interesting how it seems like, in the case of Magnus Carlsen, he plays similar to the techniques of a computer and seems to have learned techniques from what computers are able to do algorithmically. Whereas if you take someone from chess history like Aaron von Nimzowitsch, his strategies were much less related to math. And so I guess I'm kind of wondering, in terms of art, what might we learn from AI? And do we think that that's more technical? Because in terms of the conceptual aspects of art, a lot of it's, fed from human history anyway. So is that just like transitively also human? Or is there something from AI itself that we could learn about concepts in art? Sorry, that's, I think, kind of a double-sided question there.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think one way in which aesthetic hedonism has a bit of a leg up on other theories of aesthetic value is that it has like a clearly defined, ideal, or at least a relatively clearly defined ideal or goal, and that's to, whatever aesthetic value is connected to producing valuable experiences. And so if there's a way we could measure how valuable, like how pleasant an experience is for us, maybe the AI could do a better job at like optimizing that or optimizing for meaningful experiences, then yeah, we could perhaps learn from the AI how to do that in similar ways that chess players learn from computers how to play better chess.
Like audience testing, for example, would
Yeah,
that be?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, thanks.
Aidan?
I had a response to Anna, but...
Oh, yes. Oh, please. Sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
No, I was just going to say that one of the things that I think... I made a joke earlier to someone, I can't remember who, but with Ada, she's able to turn off and just go after she's finished. And as somebody who makes art, I'm like, so she's not an artist then, because I never know when I'm done, right? And like, I think there is perhaps, and it's more of a philosophical lesson, but like there is a power in just taking a prompt, taking an idea and going, I'm going to do it, I'm going to make it. You can really stop yourself from generating ideas and generating content as an artist just because you talk yourself out of it. So maybe we can learn something about using our ideas and testing them and just going for it. Maybe.
Aidan, and then we've got a question from Karun.
Thank you for the presentations. They were really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed them. However, the last two, I felt there was one missing element to both of them. And with my own eureka moment, that was the audience. The audience was missing. It was all focusing on the AI art and the art. And so what I would say is, in both propositions, what is missing is how the audience varies. So I'll do that in two ways. When I took my son into the National Gallery and looked at great art, he was very, very keen to have an experience on Minecraft. So his heightened enthusiasm from his personal perception was much greater because of his attachment to Minecraft. And so he would not be excited by Van Gogh or anything like that. He would be excited by the AI generated, if you get my analogy. The second thing is, of course, AI is not going to, it's going to affect the human. So in actual fact, the biggest thing that with the variable we're not looking at is just how AI is going to affect the human. I'm not just talking about Neuralink. I'm talking about the way that CRISPR technology is affecting biological development, as well as the fact that you then got Neuralink enabling our perceptions to be developed. I really do think that is going to be coming. So the other variable, which is even more frightening, is the fact that the human is not going to stay the same.
Yeah, I guess I just should say thank you. That's a really good angle to bring in. And I think absolutely there is an audience effect, and especially with my presentation, like, yes, like when you go and see a performance, you are engaging with something. You've made an intention to engage with that performer, and you've made an intention to like buy that ticket, and depending on who you are and what you want from the experience, that's going to determine, I guess, what you get from it, always. So I don't know quite how to answer that. But yeah, I suppose that's a whole nother presentation about, well, maybe how then does it affect how we think about music or how we enjoy music? And yeah, maybe the audience themselves could be automated to an extent, right? Like I didn't explore that angle. Like, okay, what if I perform to a false audience or not a false audience, but a holographic audience? That would be a really interesting way to think about us performing for the AI, which we don't necessarily want to think about, but perhaps we should. So I haven't answered your question, but I'm thanking you for it. It was interesting.
Yeah, so on the first point about the audience missing, I'm not sure I agree with that, because there's a pretty tight connection between the audience's response and the value of an object on aesthetic hedonism. So it's very tight. If there are no valuable experiences produced by the object in perceivers who can be seen as the audience, then the object does not have aesthetic value. I mean, you can think of it in terms of actual experiences or ideal experiences on more objective views of aesthetic hedonism. But if there's no experience, either actual or hypothetical, that would be produced by no valuable experiences that would be produced by the art in an actual audience or a hypothetical audience, then the object has no aesthetic value. So there is a close link there. On the point about the humans changing, are you alluding to like the transhumanism stuff at all with that suggestion that okay, so yeah, it's an interesting thought. I guess again, I think we would really have to ask ourselves: is changing our humanity something we would want? We'd have to really ask ourselves what we value in that situation. And if we did decide, okay, sure, we want to transcend our limitations as humans, and perhaps this changes what constitutes a human, then whatever the definition of a human or modified human is at that point would be what we would want to. I would suppose that we would value achievement and excellence for whatever that concept of an improved human is. Yeah.
Okay, we'll just take two final questions, one from Karun and one from Peter.
One of the things that I think I liked about the decolonizing art presentation was that I think it could go both ways. Like the using AI to interrogate a corpus of information could actually show you where you might have blind spots if you deliberately were looking that way. So I thought that was really also interesting, because it's sometimes you just can't think about what you're not habitually thinking about. But I also think that it points to something that we haven't talked too much about, but who will have access to the transhuman, the augmented human, and will there be a divide in that if we don't start thinking about the ownership or access to this new humanity or this new chunk of augment or whatever we're going to be, who has access to it, and are we comfortable leaving it in the commercial domain? Right? Is this something that we're just going to say, okay, well, it's going to be accessible to this group of people, and they'll be able to become wildly more productive, and we're going to leave everybody else scrambling for hygiene and sanitation and water, and they're not really going to be considered. How will we be able to integrate humans, the rest of the humans, into some kind of value chain or how does that really affect the existing dynamics of inequality? And that's just a comment, but certainly anybody can answer that.
I think that's an interesting comment. It reminds me of a movie. I think it's called Night Raiders. That's right. Yeah, Night Raiders. And it's a film that very, very clearly comments on colonization through the advancement of technology. So there's a group of people that have advanced, and they're very smart, and they live somewhere in some utopia that you never see, that exists kind of in an imagination. And then you have, I guess, like a separate divide of people who live behind these big concrete walls away from this utopia that that get like food flown in on drones and drop down, and that is kind of like an apocalyptic film that almost feels like what you're talking about and like what could happen. And the movie does have a kind of a somewhat nice ending. Not nice, but they have like these group of people who go back to indigenous ways of living, and they live together in a community with nature. But I think it would create a very stark divide between the people who could access it and then the people who couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can add, I know this isn't on AI in education, but it's something that's already even coming up in education is, what is the difference between the students that have access to the paywalled AI tools and the students who don't? And there's already it's these sorts of things, like if they happen to you in school, they will happen to you in university and happen to you in the career world. And I know you're talking on a much, much broader scale, but I think absolutely there's a big issue, especially as we see some of these companies. I know they're saying they're open source, but Elon Musk actually is suing OpenAI for claiming they're open source and then paywalling some of their content or trying to gatekeep some of their content. So I think we're already seeing a real kind of pronounced economic challenge. Yeah.
Peter.
Hi. So I'm kind of continuing off of how you were saying replacement as a consistent theme, mostly because in the middle of Sarah's presentation, mostly because, hey, we both talked about Hatsune Miku, and I did a lot of reading, and some of the reading on Hatsune Miku did broach into weird territory, but I did remember in particular the idea of the way that the slide used the term hyperreality, as in this is more practically accessible and creatable than like actual singer or dancer and stuff like that. The term is a body without organs. And I sat on that for a bit, and I was like, well, we have two people in audience right now with Aiden and I'm still so sorry, I can't remember your name off the top of my head. But with Ida, who is effectively a body without organs, the artist and or performer who does not have corporeal needs like sleep, food, whatever, and can endlessly produce art in the same way that Hatsune Miku is technically a body without organs, in the sense that it can continually produce art so long as people are actually there to kind of keep up the veil of, oh, it just becomes art on its own in that circumstance. So from that, I would kind of ask to the speakers what you think of, or if there's any reactions to that, and kind of that idea where it's like AI is almost kind of the ultimate idea of a body without organs. It is literally just endless creativity with no real inherent thought, and to kind of, as you were gesturing with the Karl Marx quote, kind of like obfuscating the actual production as far as possible.
I think it's a great question. And yes, it's a body without organs, but that doesn't mean it's a body without needs, right? And I think you're maybe hinting at this a bit, but it uses a form of energy. Energy has to come from another source of energy, right? And so if we think about the way that these technologies are using resources, you're right, there's an obfuscation going on about actually the real, like, actual servers that are being used to power things, or, you know, the kind of resources that are used to create electricity, to turn something on. So yes, there's infinite ways that we can create so fast and faster than we ever could, but also, you're right, there's perhaps another form of labor that is completely being obfuscated, and resources. Yeah.
Well, I think that's it. I just want to, before we finish, just say thank you so much to not just the 3 students who've spoken today, but all 7 students. It was so important to Jeffrey Rubinoff to use this park and the sculpture in it to try and inspire the next generation and give them memorable experiences. And it's so important to us, isn't it, Karun, and to the foundation and the board, that students play a vital role in this. You've all been amazing. It's not easy. Public speaking isn't easy. It's not easy, especially when you're not talking about your own specialist subject. And you've all done incredible jobs. So can we all give a round of applause to the students? Can we all give a round of applause to Anthony, who's and wish him luck on his ABBA voyage to Nebraska. And we'll just take 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll just have a quick wrap-up discussion, and then you can all go in your separate ways.